What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. My name's Stephen Wright, joined by Mr. William Monroe. Will, how you doing?
Steve, I'm doing well. Sound like Adam Lefko there for a minute.
Thanks, I guess.
The little cadence to your voice there. Will, How are you doing today?
I guess I'm growing as a speaker.
Yeah, right? No, I'm doing good. I was just talking to you beforehand that after last week's, like pretty much blowout one way or the other wins, this week I've got 4 games that are coming down to the wire, all projected to be within 7 points or less. So I got some tight ones, one including our Dynasty League where we need a big game from Najee. Lose by half a point. He's projected for like 19, or no, he's projected for 18.5. And we need basically 19 on the nose to win by like 0.1.
It's definitely going to be a tight one. We'll see. I mean, it's definitely doable. What was the stat you threw out in our chat? He's scored 19.
Knock on wood, he's missed it only once out of 7 games, and it was the first game of the year. But it was against Buffalo, another tough defense like we have with Pittsburgh or with Chicago tonight. So we'll see. Gonna need to have him have another big reception game probably.
Yeah, it would be something after the disappointment that was the rest of our team. Tannehill not doing much.
Big let
Beasley,
after we
Tyreek.
were hyped up for that JT performance on Thursday that we got.
Yeah, pretty much canceled out by Nick Chubb on the other side.
Yeah.
And then Tyreek's really the one that burned us. But Landry didn't
that whole
much.
Offense, man,
Colts
it's
defense.
crazy to see them really floundering. I mean, 13 points against Jordan Love led Green Bay team. You'd think that they would be able to really handle Green Bay.
Yeah, you'd like to think that Andy Reid would make some adjustments and figure this out.
Yeah,
he's had a lot of tenure. Yeah, he's not like a new coach that's never faced adversity before. Like he should know what he does and what he's doing. But yeah, I'm sure it's just more difficult than we're making it out to be.
Yeah, it seems like that. But that was that was a 4:00 game, I think. Then we've got the Monday night here. It's coming week here for week 10. We've got the Ravens and the Dolphins on Thursday night. And then a couple of bye weeks coming up. Seems like not as important of a bye week. We've got the Bengals, who got some fantasy options. The Bears, pretty limited. Giants, you get a couple, and the Texans. So probably not going to be as impactful of a bye week this week.
People make their start-sit decisions based on who's playing the Texans, so that might
is true.
have some kind of reverse impact there. But yeah, you got some people in there. You got your mix in, and Chase, Burrow, Higgins, Herbert, Montgomery. If Montgomery's been activated, correct? I believe
Montgomery has been activated.
Yeah,
yes,
I think he has. Saquon, blah blah blah. There's a few people, but anyway, do still got to get through some waiver options here. So you ready to jump in?
Yeah, I think we are ready to get it going.
Cool. So first on the list for running backs, we have Niamh Heinz had himself a good week. Rostered in about 53% of leagues. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I think he's an interesting one. I think the game script you'd think would have not been on his side, with a going up really big, but 6 carries, 74 yards, and a touchdown. So he had a really big really big day on the ground. A couple of big carries, and then another 4 catches, 34 yards, some return yards. So, yeah, I mean, he had a big game. I don't know how repeatable it is. You're probably going to be, get 1 or 2 of those every once in a while, but you're still firmly behind Jonathan Taylor, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people, they look at, and us included to a certain degree, everyone looks at Hines as like some nice PPR asset to have. He's a good depth play. He's going to get you some catches. He'll get you something. It's not too bad. But if you look at his past few weeks, he's done next to nothing. In our format here, half point PPR. So the full point, you're going to get a little bit more. But, we had this week, which was the 18.8. The week prior, 4.4, 1.7, 2.7, 1.8, 0.1. then you get back to a 16. So like he was terrible for very long stretches. A couple of those games were losses too, which are supposed to fit his mantra. So yeah, I'm surprised to see that he's rostered in over half of leagues. Yeah, I was surprised to see that given, what he's been doing lately. But yeah, with that said, I'm with you. Like, if you want to add him because you need some running back depth and, maybe the targets are going to come, that's fine. But I'm not bidding on him with any sort of expectation that he's going to do anything. Maybe I looked at him for free. I doubt that's going to happen after a big game. Somebody's going to bid something, but I'm just not interested.
One that may be a little more interesting depending on, I guess, maybe some injuries. Devonta Freeman, 20% rostered, going up against Miami this week. That's the Thursday night game.
Yeah, this is another one where the rostership surprised me. I thought it would be higher. I wasn't expecting, 53% like Heinz or anything, but I was expecting it to be higher than 20. I think he's somebody that has to be owned, but I don't know. Once you have him on your roster, you're going to have to make that decision every week, whether you start him or not. And I feel like you're just going to get it wrong. And maybe that's just the luck that, we all have as fantasy people. The week you sit them is the week they go off, and then the week you start them is the week they don't do anything. I feel like he's going to be hard to predict. And like you said, there's some injury issues there, and that can impact the decision. But it's going to be so hard guessing what weeks you should be starting him and what not. I'd rather almost not have the headache on my roster, but he's been good for fantasy at times, so I think he should be rostered. I just personally don't really want him. What about you?
Yeah, I think he's more of just like a depth play for your bench. You can, start him here and there when you have you have a good matchup or you have some bye week issues. But I think you definitely trust him. Even, Latavius Murray's been, I think, in and out of the lineup. He didn't play again this week. So he comes back, it muddies it a bit. But I think if he is the guy, you have a chance at flexing him. And at the very least, it's just good depth play there for redraft leagues. So I don't know. Miami's maybe a decent matchup because you think maybe the Ravens can kind of run away with that one. Miami looked decent this week, but not playing well. Haven't won many games this year. So I think Freeman's not a bad pickup, at least to have as your, as a depth piece.
Yeah, agreed. Another guy that's emerging as an interesting depth option is Jordan Howard, only rostered in 13% of leagues, but his past 2 weeks have definitely been start worthy. I know, my personal concerns being, what's his role like when Miles Sanders returns? Because that's kind of when he started turning back up. So as our Eagles fan, what do you think of Mr. Jordan Howard?
Yeah, I think it's tough because, when the Eagles have traditionally been a good team, they have had like a bunch of running backs, and it's been tough to figure out who to play. And it kind of feels like that, like the 2017 year where you've had Jay Ajayi and LeGarrette Blount and Corey Clement. They're playing a bunch of guys. So it's really what you're getting here. You're getting Boston Scott and Howard playing a lot, and then you're mixing in Gainwell. So I think he'll be relevant. He'll, you start him, you're banking on a touchdown. If he doesn't get a touchdown, you're probably disappointed. But then once Sanders comes back, which I think would be in, probably about a week or two, you're probably not going to be able to play him. So yeah, I don't know. I just don't know how relevant he'll be for the extended period of time, especially with Denver, who surprisingly shut down Dallas this week.
Yeah, he might, and I'm going to throw out an old name for you here, Will. But given his performance, he might have earned himself I don't remember his last name, a Tolbert-like role.
I think that was his last name. Something
yeah,
Tolbert,
that was his last
right?
name. Yeah, I don't remember his first. Mike Tolbert?
Yeah,
Robert Tolbert?
One of them. They both sound right.
Yeah, right. I remember starting him a lot back in the day because every week he'd score a touchdown. So, maybe Blount is a better, modern day example of that, of like, what? He's played well and maybe he's earned himself the goal line role even when Sanders gets back, in which case he's flex worthy. If you pick the game they scores a touchdown in, if you want to roll the dice on that, on the Eagles offense, it's another question. But, he might have got himself some sort of role.
Yeah, and then that's really what you're kind of banking on here is, him hitting and getting that touchdown. So don't really think that's a guy that you want to roster. I mean, if you want to pick him up, sure. I'm probably not spending too much on him. Probably only 1 week, maybe 2 more weeks that he's relevant. And then Sanders is back, and then it just becomes really muddy. So, not interested there. We got a couple of younger guys that have some relative relevance in Ramondre Stevenson and Eno Benjamin. And in the interest in either of them, Steve.
So it's Stevenson, not really. It's really hard to tell because both him and Damian Howard, I believe both of them got hurt. I know Stevenson got hurt. He had a head injury. I believe Damian got hurt too. I could be wrong there, but he had himself a good game. He's had another, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks this year where he had good games, and then the rest haven't been anything. So I'm really not expecting anything. If I'm right and Damian Harris was hurt and Stevenson ends up being fine, that he'd be a good play. But other than that, not super interested. Eno had himself a good fantasy game. He had that touchdown. I don't expect him to play defenses as bad as the 49ers right now too often. So I'm not expecting that to repeat. But the Cardinals have been using, Connor and Chase all year. And, if they're going to continue using 2 backs, it's going to be Eno. So he is worth rostering, I think.
Yeah, sounds like a high ankle sprain. So that could keep Chase Edmonds out for a little while. Yeah.
And Eno's a tough one to judge from a waiver bidding process. I think, this late in the season with bye weeks and stuff coming up, he might be up over 20% or maybe right at 20%.
Yeah, especially because you'd imagine, guaranteed work, but guaranteed, opportunity or chance at work for an extended period of time. I mean, you got to imagine at the very least, they're probably going to put Edmonds on the short-term IR. So I'd think probably at least 3 weeks. And then, from there you have opportunity for more if that is a high ankle sprain, which a lot of times we see that linger for a while.
Yeah. And there was a lot of Eno. Well, I don't know about anymore, but when he was drafted, there were a lot of supporters of his, and maybe they're coming out of the woodwork.
You do got 2 weeks and then the bye week 12. So I don't know, is the short-term IR 3 games or 3 weeks?
I believe it's 3 weeks.
So
and one of those weeks against Carolina.
Games. Carolina this week.
Yeah,
Seattle
it's a good defense.
Next week.
So
that's
Chicago
tough. and the Rams coming out of it. So not a great stretch. I don't know that I want to spend up on him, but sometimes some people may not have the luxury of not spending up just based on running backs that are out there, all the injuries that we incur. So I think he's not a bad waiver claim, and of the guys we've talked about so far, he'd probably be the most intriguing because I think he has the most upside. Maybe Freeman, but I think probably him. So moving on to the next guy here, we got Mark Ingram and Alex Collins, our last 2 running backs here. Ingram looked pretty good, and he's been, almost borderline flexible. He, despite being used behind Alvin Kamara, 38% rostered. It's got Tennessee's surprisingly elite defense after this week's performance. Any interest in Mark Ingram here?
Yeah, I think he should be rostered for sure. I'm probably not confident enough to just plug him into the lineup yet. But in a desperation play, I would just rather see a little bit more of him with the Saints before I pull the trigger on actually starting him. But yeah, I think he's interested, and he definitely should be rostered. 38% is too low. Alex Collins, on the flip side, I feel like somebody that's going to be on this episode for the rest of the year. He's going to have some games where he's good and other games where it's just somebody else. And that's probably going to get old, but I think he should be rostered as well. You're getting to the part of the season where you realize what you are. You're either out of the playoffs or you're contending or you're locked in, and you got to start thinking about that playoff run, and a key thing for playoff runs is running back depth. And
one thing about Collins too is it does sound like we are going to be getting Russell Wilson back. He tweeted out that he's cleared to play, or that he's healed from the injury. So it sounds like there's a very good chance he could be back this week. And I think that could really change the game, when Russell's back. they are going to have a better offense overall, and if they're winning games, he could be in better situations to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, that could definitely open things up for sure. That's a good point. So yeah, maybe go snag Collins now.
Coming off the bye too, he may be falling through the cracks. People might be realizing.
Yeah, they're focusing on Eno and stuff like that, and Freeman, and they forget about him. So yeah, absolutely. That we're going to move on. That rounds out the running back position here. Moving on to the wide receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones had himself another nice week here. Known to kind of pop off here and there. I think this is his second or third game of the year where he's had a pretty big week. And I guess it remains to be seen if it continues with the absence of OBJ officially being gone. Maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely a hole for wide receiver 2 there.
Yeah, so maybe he steps up. We'll see. OBJ's kind of been out of the lineup for a while.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the counter argument. But roster in 13% of leagues. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think, I wouldn't mind rostering him. Just going to see. I don't think you can play him yet. He only had 3 targets, 2 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. So big play is always good. But, I think he was injured, right? So he didn't have any stats here the last 2 weeks. Another big game before that, though, week 6, 4 catches, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So it seems like it's a big play guy. He could be getting, a high upside player. You got New England this week, Detroit and Baltimore after that are both surprisingly good against the pass. So it's definitely something to think about, but I think, I'm probably not spending much on him. I'd be more interested in a breakout of a guy like we have coming up next year in Elijah Moore.
Yeah, Moore, it's 3 weeks in a row now that he's been solid for fantasy. This week obviously much more than solid, but 3 weeks of being solid. You have the question marks as to the quarterback situation.
Yeah. Who is it?
Who is it? Yeah, he's been really good with White.
Played good with the third string there too, Josh Johnson, I believe, right? John, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll see what happens when Zach Wilson returns. That's and what happens as far as with Elijah Moore. I would imagine Zach Wilson's definitely starting. You do have Buffalo this week. So
yes, tough matchup.
That is a tough matchup. If he doesn't get grabbed up on waivers, you could probably just not grab him. And next week, and imagine he's not going to be doing too much. You just get him on the cheap. But
yeah, I think depending on how deep your roster is, he's not a bad flyer to throw on the back. I'd probably rather throw him on the back of my roster than Peoples-Jones at this point.
And after that, after Buffalo, you got Miami and Houston. Philly, Miami again. You do got Tampa Bay in championship week, so you will not be using him then. But that's a far way away. I don't think anybody's thinking about relying on him for that point. But to your point, he is the rookie that could be ascending in the second half of the season. That's the story that you like to see. So that might be coming to pass right now.
Yeah, I think it seems like another young receiver. So usually what we see, right? A couple of them will break out early, but for the most part, a lot of those rookie receivers come on in the second half of the year. It takes a little while to get used to the NFL. So hopefully that's the case, especially for us. I know we have him in our dynasty. I have him in another dynasty league. So hoping to see him continue to show these flashes.
Yeah, and I guess we'll transition. We'll skip somebody on our list real quick here, Will. But speaking of rookies, Rashad Bateman continuing to soak up targets. Not having, monster fantasy impact. He's been fine. He's been usable. Flex kind of potential. Again, Watkins has been out. So, maybe that changes when Sammy Watkins returns. But, if I'm the Ravens, I'd rather continue to use the young guy with a lot of potential over the, I don't want to call Watkins old, but the guy you know everything about at this point.
Yeah, you're not learning anything new there.
Yeah, another guy that we've talked about quite a few times. Only rostered in 36% of leagues. He's been solid. Like if you get your depth for your playoff run, he's pretty good depth. You could just plug him in there and you'll get 7-8 targets or something to that degree. And the Ravens offense, which is pretty good.
Yeah, and once again, he hasn't been great, but this week here we've got 5 catches, 52 yards, so 7.5 here in a half-point PPR. 8 targets again, though, so I think he's definitely someone that needs to be rostered and in the right matchup. You got Miami, you got Chicago. Decent matchups for receivers here. I think you can play him in some of these matchups here. So, yeah, I like him. I don't know that you have to play him this week, but in a pinch, I wouldn't mind throwing him in the flex, against Miami, a team that, they have some really good cornerbacks, but surprisingly have been very bad against the pass, but very bad against wide receivers from a fantasy perspective.
Yep, I agreed. That makes sense. Next up, the guy we skipped, Mr. Tim Patrick, only rostered in 25% of leagues. In our scoring, half point, he has had double digits for fantasy points in 6 of the 9 weeks so far this year.
And that's probably the weeks that we didn't play him in our dynasty league.
For real. But you got to figure, most people are in PPR, so those numbers are even higher, and only rostered in 25% of leagues. That's surprising. I don't know. There's probably some trust issues there because you don't trust Teddy fully. You got Sutton there, you got Fant there, you got Jerry Jeudy there. So it feels like any given week, but he's been pretty reliable all year.
Yeah, I think it's tough because you got the Eagles, who have been pretty good against the wide receiver position from a fantasy perspective here halfway through the year. A couple of good cornerbacks, but Darius Slay did get hurt at the end of the game. I haven't heard any details, but you'd think that their top 2 guys would likely be sticking the top 2 guys in Denver there. So should Slay be out, you're going to be having a 4th corner probably lining up on Patrick. So definitely an opportunity, but you do get the bye week coming up afterwards. So I don't know that I'm spending a ton on him because he might be a candidate that you have to cut depending on how your weeks and how your roster looks in week 11. So yeah, I don't know. Do you see someone you're looking to pick up and spend up on?
If I need wide receiver depth, I'll be looking to pick him up. I'm not willing to spend up on him, I don't think, though. And again, I could be wrong. I just said 6 of 9 weeks, he's been good, but, like apparently a lot of other people, I just don't trust him. But if you need the depth, that's a fine shot to take there. Additionally, for some depth, we mentioned it before, Michael Gallup, he's expected to play week 10.
Yeah, I think they had a chance to play this week, but they decided to hold off, and it looks like he is hopefully going to be able to play this coming week.
Which is funny because he hasn't played since week 1, and yet he's rostered in 48% of leagues. Meanwhile, Tim Patrick is doing very good, only rostered in 25.
People are just scared to let go of Michael Gallup, or they have been all year.
That's offensive recognition, quarterback recognition, name recognition a little bit more. There's a lot that goes into that, I'm sure. But your last chance to scoop him up, I'd imagine. But we've talked about him before. You have anything to add to previous conversations on Gallup?
No, I think he's not a bad, add to the back of your roster and see what happens, see how he looks coming back. Definitely not trying to play him. Atlanta's not a bad matchup, but I'm not ready to play him just yet. But yeah, another guy here that I think you can claim, we always seem to be a little more interested in the receivers than the running backs, but not willing to spend as much on them.
Moving into another position where you're not willing to spend up too much on a bunch of flyers here, the tight end position, Troutman. It kind of not really in the Bateman mode, but he's getting a lot of targets the past 2 weeks. Hasn't done too much from a fantasy perspective, but he's getting a lot of targets. Only rostered in 5% of leagues. The target count interests you?
Quarterback, not having the quarterback there. If this is Winston and those targets are there, I think I'm a little more interested. It's tough though. Other than that, you got Troutman 5% rostered. I think he's worth a shot, against Tennessee. Defense hasn't been great, but this last week played great. So who knows if that's just, you're getting amped up to play them. You're amped up for the first week without Derrick Henry. Maybe that comes down a bit, but I don't know that he's someone I'd want to stream. There's probably at least one, maybe 2 other guys that I'd be a little more inclined to stream than him this week. And I don't know that you can afford to just throw him on your bench and stream another guy. 2 roster spots on tight end is pretty tough.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, that's a tough one. You got to be pretty desperate there to see if something comes along there. Got some other options that are probably a little bit more reliable here. Conklin. been pretty solid. It might be kind of matchup dependent there. Only rostered in 38% of leagues. Do you like Conklin?
Yes, I think he is in this matchup too against the Chargers, who can score. I know we were talking about they played the Eagles this week and were able to still put up some numbers against corners that and team that has played well, but both the Chargers and the Eagles have been poor against the tight end, and we saw Goddard. He played decent. I don't think Hurts was able to find him too much. I know it was mostly Devonta Smith that was really the benefactor there. But he had the Chargers have overall been pretty susceptible to the tight end. Third most points to fantasy tight ends, despite this down week for Goddard. So I think Conklin's not a bad stream. I think I'm probably most interested in Dan Arnold. Now that is going to come down to Trevor Lawrence's health. I don't know if we got any specific updates. I think last I heard he should be fine with coming off of an ankle injury. He had a pretty good first quarter though. I mean, considering that he got injured, 118 yards, 3 carries for 4 yards, so not too much there. But I think he got injured at some point in the first quarter, so he was on pace to throw for some big yards against a tough Buffalo team. If he's out there, I think Arnold is the guy that I'm trying to stream out of this bunch.
He'll be in game script positive situations for most of the year. The Jaguars aren't going to be taking down Buffalo-sized teams very often. So, yeah, he'll get plenty of garbage time and everything as well. So, yeah, he is a good option. With a bit of a reminder, I don't think there's any word on Logan Thomas yet, but he should be due back soon. I would think.
Yeah,
you haven't heard anything, right?
He's eligible to come off at this point. I think he may have been eligible this last week, but they had to bye. I don't know if there's any official news, but I think it seems like he is going to be eligible to come off, and I would imagine he will practice. Last I see was Tuesday of last week. They just mentioned that he will practice after the bye. So keep an eye out to see if there's any news from today, Monday, or Tuesday. But I think he's not a bad guy to throw on the back of your roster. Talk about Troutman and not a guy. Talk about Troutman and not a guy that I really want to throw on the back of my roster and wait for. Logan Thomas is someone I wouldn't mind rostering 2 tight ends for. I think he's a guy that you can throw on the back of your roster. Maybe you have to start Arnold or Conklin. But Thomas is someone that if he is healthy, is someone you can plug in and play for the rest of the season. If he's back to full health.
Yeah, and that's why we've seen Ricky Seals-Jones doing so well. There is no second receiving option that's really emerged there, outside of like McKissick or a Gibson. There's no wide receiver at tight end that's really emerged there as the second option. So yeah, when he gets back, all the opportunities there for him. And finally, Will, I guess we got to wait for tonight's game to finish up on Mr. Freiermuth, but this is a big one. He's had 2 good weeks. He puts that a third one here together. He's probably a guy that you just plug in and move forward with, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if he keeps playing like this, I don't. Do we know? Was there an injury to Eric Ebron ahead of him?
Yes, Ebron is down, I believe.
Yeah.
Let me see.
So that helps as long as he continues to be down. Now that
he has a
may not be the
hamstring
case.
problem.
Gotcha.
And that's going to linger because it's a hamstring. So
yeah,
we'll see. But this is his time to shine, right? This is what a rookie wants to see. The guy in front of, well, not wants to see, but the guy in front of you has gone down. The opportunity is yours. Yeah,
and he's gotten the targets. They don't really have the opportunity to go too far downfield there in Pittsburgh, so a lot of them end up, in short to Najee, short to Deontay Johnson, and short to Mr. Freiermuth here. So I think he's not a bad option as well. Like you said, if we see him come up again, that's 3 weeks in a row. Well, 3 out of 4 with the bye there, so pretty much 3 fantasy games in a row. I think you got to jump in those flames and see how far it takes you.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. Time, Will, to move into the streaming portion of the show.
The flip side of Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, absolutely. We get to the quarterback position. Freiermuth's quarterback, Big Ben, is up against Detroit. Bridgewater is against Philly. Wentz versus Jacksonville. Matt Ryan at Dallas and Trevor Lawrence at Indy. Who do you want?
I was going through the quarterbacks, and the guys that we try to focus on 60% or less roster. Not thrilled about many of them. I mean, Matt Ryan looks somewhat interesting now because Dallas got, pretty torched by Denver, but I don't even think Bridgewater did that great. I think it was mostly on the ground. So, I mean, maybe him. I think Wentz is probably the one that I'm most interested in. And I mean, he's coming off of, a good game against the Jets, but they're still the Jets right now. So, 23, almost 24 points for Bridgewater, 249 yards, one touchdown, or a rushing touchdown. So, not bad. Matt Ryan probably will be next. And if Lawrence is healthy, I wouldn't mind throwing him out there. So, I'd probably put it Wentz, Ryan, Lawrence. What about you?
Yeah, probably Wentz is the definite for me. I find that pretty easy given how fantasy consistent he's been. But yeah, I tend to agree probably with that order. I keep looking at Big Ben and looking at Detroit and being like, well, if I'm playing
Detroit.
It is Detroit. And if there's somebody that I want the highest upside for, is it Big Ben? Like, we've seen Big Ben in the past with his, big 4 touchdown games and all that stuff. And it's like, well, he might be the upside option, but then you look at the year and that hasn't happened at all this year. So I don't know if that's really still in the cards for him anymore. It doesn't seem like it. He's done it in the past. So, there's opportunity for it to happen. It's still there somewhere. I just don't think the likelihood's as high anymore. So I glanced at Big Ben. Ultimately, I'm right with you in probably the same exact order.
Yeah, so that's what we're thinking for quarterbacks. Not too many great streaming options out there this week, unfortunately. When we look at defensive streamers, we're looking at the Broncos, 47% rostered versus the Eagles. We have the Titans, new elite defense, 9% rostered versus New Orleans. We'll see what the quarterback situation looks like for them going into that. Packers, 27% rostered against Seattle, which could be changing if we do get full confirmation that Russell Wilson is active. And then the Browns, 50% rostered at New England.
Yeah, I'll pretty easily take the Broncos here. If you could shut down Dallas, you can shut down Philly, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So they seem to be the easy option. The Titans I don't trust. The Packers, like you said, I imagine Russ is back, and I don't know what's happening with the Packers. Is Aaron Rodgers able to come back this week? I don't know. I haven't paid attention. Do you know? Because I really haven't paid attention to that part. There's so many other bits of the story. Nobody's focused on that. I think there's a
chance at the end of the week he could get the right amount of tests, but I think we still don't know for sure.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'm not interested in playing that game. And then the Browns, I do think the Browns are probably a pretty good option as well as in, with these 4 options here. I said they're probably not the best option, but pretty good with the company around them here. I'm just worried about New England because they're kind of hot right now. So I will stick with the Broncos here. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's the Broncos. If you really want to gamble, I wouldn't mind taking a shot on the Titans. We said earlier with some of the New Orleans stream options, were the Titans, as to say, just shift of the mentality of the team without Derrick Henry, or is this just a 1 week energize and then they kind of go back to what they were? I think it's tough. I wouldn't mind taking a shot with them. I probably look for Denver first, but the Titans I think wouldn't be a bad shot, and you probably can get them for free.
Yeah, that's definitely the easiest stream because they're out there. They're rostered in 9% of leagues. Broncos and Browns both hovering around 50%. So that is very true. And that's going to wrap up the waiver episode here. Tune in on Thursday for our start episode for week 10, Will.
Can you believe it?
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. Flies by every year.
Yeah, absolutely. But tune in then for the start sit episode. Until then, trust your board.